Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my book review of the book Eclipse by Stephenie Meyer. This is the third book in the Twilight Saga, and I've been reading through this series throughout this year. I made a goal of branching out into new genres, and the new genre that I wanted to branch out into this year was YA. I started, I'd read some YA before, but I was really wanted to get to the big ones this year. So I read Divergent at the very beginning of the year, and then I've been reading through the Twilight Saga, and next month I will finish the Twilight Saga with Breaking Dawn, and then I will have completed 2 YA at the beginning of the year, and I intend to read 2 YA at the end of the year. So that's my current plan. So I read Twilight, and I really enjoyed this. I gave this like an 8-ish out of 10, and actually, as I give it time, I could have given it a little bit higher, maybe an 8.5. Like, this is a pretty solid book. I really enjoyed it. A few things I didn't enjoy, but I loved the atmosphere of this book, and I loved the world building and the romance, and I know that's cheesy and cliche, and I probably will lose subscribers for liking this book, but I did. And then I read New Moon, which was entertaining, and I would describe this book as really much, like, for the most part, up until the last portion of the book, it's a slice of life book. You're really just getting to see what life is like in Forks. And for some people that's going to work. I think the slice of life was good until it got over the top. And I was like, all right, let's actually get some plot in here. And so that's where this book kind of failed, I think. Then you have Eclipse, which is the book I'm reviewing in this video. And I'd say I really liked the beginning of the book, really liked the end of the book. I thought the end of the book was phenomenal. And then the middle of the book was just overlong. Not because I think that she was doing things necessarily that were bad in there, it's just that the middle of the book was so repetitive. It almost got to the point of, she hangs out with Edward and the Cullens, something bad happens. She hangs out with Jacob, she argues with Jacob, they get angry with each other, she leaves, he apologizes, they make up, things like that. Like, it just, that repetition just happens so many times that I was like, all right, I get it, I'm ready to actually get the plot moving. I assume that the reason that Stephenie Meyer included all of that was to really sell us on the dynamic and the relationship of the characters, but it didn't need to be that many times. This is a pretty beefy YA book. It's about 630 pages. I think at least 100, maybe 130 pages could have been cut out. I think that the first 2 books, which were both about 500 and 550 pages, kind of hit that sweet spot. 5 to 550 is where this book should have ended up. It feels just overlong because of it. And I thought that this has some really good themes in there. I think that the themes about abstinence, about marriage, about the roles of couples and the roles of individuals within a relationship, I think are really solid. And, you know, I have a lot of family that loves to hate on this book. A lot of friends that love to hate on the Twilight Saga, the movies and the books. But what this book series does for talking about abstinence among relationships before marriage, I just think is just phenomenal, and I really appreciate what Stephenie Meyer did here and the influence that she could have, and I do appreciate that quite a bit. So despite some of my criticisms of the series, I do appreciate the themes quite a bit. There's a theme I know that's coming up in the 4th book I'm not excited about, but we'll talk about that when I get there. With this book, I also thought that the love triangle was both good and bad in this book. I thought that, you know, Edward was portrayed just right to be the love interest, and this sounds cheesy and stuff, but I would consider myself Team Edward from the get-go. I really enjoyed him, and I enjoyed him in the movies. But when I read New Moon, I was surprised at how much I empathized with Jacob. I thought that Jacob was really well written here. I think that his connection with Bella was really well written. And I felt like, yeah, maybe I don't think that he's the right one for her to end up with. But if something happened to Edward, I can totally see her being with Jacob and life being good. And so this book is all about pitting them against each other. And they're both constantly arguing, and they're both constantly fighting with Bella over the other one and calling each other names and doing all this stuff. And again, that goes into a little bit into the repetition and repetitiveness of the book. But also, it just made them both annoying, particularly Jacob. I mean, Edward was a little bit annoying at times when he was talking about Jacob, but he was overall much more respectful, and he only got rude and angry when Jacob did. Most of the time, he was protective of Bella and would say, I don't want to. I don't think that's a smart move of you to go down there. But he was generally respectful. There were only a couple of times where he used a derogatory term to refer to Jacob, as I think he calls him pup a couple times. But usually that's in response of Jacob calling him a bad name, like bloodsucker. And so I thought that Edward came looking really good out of this book, and I thought Jacob just lost the momentum he had as a character. Like now I really don't empathize with Jacob as much, and I feel like Jacob, you're just so rude, and you're just so you're so bitter, and he just was an unappealing character. Yet, despite that criticism, I really liked the way that Stephenie Meyer wrote Bella's internal thoughts about the two of them, because you can tell that she truly thinks that Edward is the one for her, but she still has feelings for Jacob, and she still thinks that they're kind of even in a way romantic, even though she feels like Edward's the right one for her. I thought she sold that beautifully, and from Bella's perspective, I think that she absolutely nailed that in the book, and so I applaud that. I'm just like you better be Team Edward. So there were a lot of sequences. I thought the sequence towards the end with the Volturi showing up a little bit, and they fight Victoria, but we never really see Victoria in the book. That's a problem, is that we don't actually see the villain. Like, Victoria is mentioned so many times in the book, and the threat that she has for them, but she's never really present in the book. She doesn't have much of a role, and so because of that, she didn't feel very palpable as a villain. She didn't feel like, oh my goodness, I feel something. I feel something whenever they talk about Arrow or whenever they talk about the Volturi, but I just didn't feel anything with Victoria because she's barely present. And even though the Volturi are barely present, they are used well here. Even though I don't even think Arrow himself is present in the book, but he was handled well. Victoria just isn't, and so she just kind of feels bland. She really feels like middle book villain. Like, we have to go through her before we get to the grand finale, which gives me hope for the grand finale that maybe I'll really like Breaking Dawn. But at the moment, I'm just kind of like annoyed at the villain we got here. So I've been really negative about the book in this review. So you might think that I have an overall negative rating, and I don't. I still have a positive rating because the enjoyable moments in this book, particularly the beginning, particularly the end, I thought were really strong. I love reading the dynamic of Bella and her dad. I love her dynamic with Edward. I love the themes that were present about romance and relationships and abstinence. I thought all that was great. So there were some really good positives. It's just this book could have been a solid top tier YA book for me, and solidified this as a top-tier series. And instead, this seems like a step below. This does not feel like a top-tier YA series. This feels like just a good series. Now, maybe Breaking Dawn will be like the most earth-shattering book I've ever read, but I doubt it will. I think it'll just be a great book. I will say one thing that this book could have done better, and it would have really bumped it up a lot, is if we had taken a sequence, and maybe it was the sequence in the tent with the warmth, the heater thing. Maybe if she had changed that a little bit, and what I wanted was just a conversation between Edward and Jacob that had nothing to do with Bella. I wanted them to have a sequence where maybe they have to go out scouting something, and so the two of them just walk off, and you see from their perspective. The whole book, except for the epilogue, is from Bella's perspective, so I understand why this didn't happen. But if we had gotten that, the two of them just having a conversation, and Bella's not in the room, Bella's not the elephant in the room that causes this anger and animosity between them, and just seeing how they would react without her, I thought would have been really fascinating. And it could have sold me more on their dynamic, because they have, even though they hate each other's guts in the book, and their tribes hate each other's guts, there's also this kind of sense of respect that they have that sense of respect was not properly sold. So I think that could have been handled better. So that is my review of Eclipse. I'd give it a 7 out of 10, about the same rating I gave New Moon. Good, but not great. I'm hoping that the fourth book is great and bumps the series up a little bit, but right now it's just a good series. So if you've read Eclipse, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Are you Team Edward? Are you Team Jacob? Let me know those thoughts. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.